Hello and welcome to another episode of Metra Home Tech Tips. I'm Brent.
I'm Adam.
And what do we got today, Adam?
Well, we have probably one of the most important skills any technician in any field of work can possibly have.
Brown nosing?
Well, other than that. No, that's your specialty.
Oh.
So the most important thing that you guys can know out there today in any field of work, it doesn't matter if you're in 12 volt, if you're in audio video, if you're an electrician, if you're a mechanic, even if you're out there mowing lawns. Troubleshooting.
Ooh.
How to troubleshoot.
That's why it says Troubleshooting 101.
So today we kind of want to talk about, we are going to stay inside of our own AV world that we operate in.
Our own sandbox?
Yep, our own sandbox. And we're going to kind of walk with you guys about how to go through and troubleshoot problems. Now, we're not going to talk one specific problem. We are just generalizing the concept of talking about troubleshooting. Very simple. We're going to go in there. We're going to show you, which side do we start at? Do we start in the middle? Do we start on at the source? Do we start at the display? We're going to be working our way through that, Brent and I, and show
some of the
you how to get
tools
through some of that.
we recommend you have on your vehicle.
Exactly.
To help you through this process.
Exactly. So again, just a general concept of it. We have a problem. Our problem is something. In this instance, let's go ahead and just say we don't have video in some fashion.
Okay.
So what we have with us today, we're doing a little bit of show and tell. We borrowed our video department's display here, so we actually have like a little monitor here for it. We've got an HDMI input. We have with us as well in our top-down shot, we've got the AIO2. We have this nice little NEMA box, and we'll get into more details about that later. We also have a signal generator or a source. And let's talk about this a little bit.
I like this piece a lot.
This piece is great. Now, what should we have? What should the installers have on their truck?
Let's start with the basics of what you should have when you roll on a job site. Without question, thing number one is you got to have a source. It is amazing how many calls we get. The guy's got a problem. It's like, well, okay, let's try another source.
Right.
I don't have another source.
Yeah.
So all you have is the DirecTV or the cable box or the. We really can't start a process until we can start eliminating things.
Yeah, we got to know where the problem is. That's the first thing.
This is a wonderful source. It's about $60, and I think they're on sale frequently at Amazon for around $40 or something like that.
Yeah.
It is a media server that has the ability to accept a USB drive.
Right.
Now, we use these at shows for our matrices and some of our other devices because you can go to 4kmedia.org. Did you write that down?
Yeah, I will. Yep, I sure will.
It is a 4kmedia.org, and you can download a wide variety of content made by Sony, LG, Samsung, and others specifically to show off their TVs, but it's short clips. Put them on a USB drive, and it's a great way to test your system.
Exactly.
I would also recommend at the same time going online to YouTube or other places and download some 1080p content. The reason you do this is not every job is 4K.
Exactly.
And you may need to test the capability of transitioning from 1080p to 4K and back.
Also, don't rely on the idea that there may be internet there when you go to do the troubleshooting.
Yeah.
So put that media on a thumb drive. That's why we're saying grab a piece like this, because then you can download and put it on there. There's another great thing, Buck the Bunny, I believe is what it's called.
You were telling me about this. Yeah, it has different resolutions.
Yeah, it's an open source. It's free to use for whoever wants to use it. You just go onto their website and download it. They have different. It's the same video over and over again, and it's not the best video. It's probably created back in like 2006 or so, maybe even earlier than that, because it's almost like Toy Story 2 graphics on it. But the idea is that what they do is every time that a new media standard resolution comes out, they'll release that video again in that higher resolution,
so you've got the different
sizing.
Generations in the growth.
Exactly.
To see the color changes and the
exactly.
The
so you have an opportunity to download the same video. Just here's a 720 or even a 480. I think they even go that far back. 720, 1080p, 4K. I believe they even have released an 8K version of it in anticipation of the 8K resolution. So it's a really great source. I believe it's called Buck the Bunny. If I'm wrong about that, it'll be down in the comments or down in the description.
By the way, please send your questions and your comments to to us. As with every episode, we do have a giveaway.
Yes, we do.
And what is this week's giveaway?
It's been such a good giveaway that we're just going to go ahead and give away another one.
Ooh.
We're going to do the HDMI AOC, HDMI. Oh, goodness, IB HD AOC -030. It's a fiber optic
30-meter cable.
30-foot cable.
30-foot cable.
30-foot cable. We're giving that away again today. So again, the best questions, the best comments, the best stories. We're opening it up, guys. Give us your stories. Give us your questions.
And
let us know what's going on.
We would love to know how you do your troubleshooting, because we have our opinions, and it's what works for us for tech support, but that doesn't mean you don't have a better idea. So let us know.
Yeah, or give us a story about something that you ran into when you were troubleshooting it.
Or just tell me I'm awesome.
Weird. Well, I mean, I don't know how many of those are going to come in, but that's another thing entirely. So definitely get, on your truck.
Can I just
bring
slink
with
off now?
You sure can if you want to. That's up to you.
Just checking.
All right, so what we have, of course, on your truck, it's a great thing to have at minimum. Grab one of these little Android media players of some sort.
This is one brand, but there are a number of other brands. I'm told
tons
that
of them
the
out there.
Sling Box is pretty good.
Yep.
They're Android-based. Recommend at least 9.0 or higher.
Right.
So that you get the most, it's a little quicker that way. The old ones can take forever to boot up.
And make sure it supports, the resolutions that you're working with, HDR, all that kind of good stuff.
And that it has a USB capability.
Yeah.
I would also recommend one that has 5-volt USB power supply, because you may not always have power where you need for testing.
Yeah.
So you can always run it off a power brick.
Exactly, yeah, just a little phone charging power brick on it.
Yes, which is a great thing, another great thing to have in your kit.
Yeah.
Also in your kit is, if you can swing it, and they're not free.
Yeah.
I think they're $2,500 to $3,000 for the set.
You would know better than I would, yeah.
I don't.
No, okay.
This is an excellent tool if you can justify it at your shop. Have at least one if possible.
Right.
It's a generator and an analyzer. Now, this does not require power in the system. It will properly power up an AOC
Correct.
or any active cable, so you can look at bandwidth, feature sets, audio, HDCP, all the functions, and you can test a display with the generator, or you can test a source with the analyzer.
Exactly.
In this case, we're using it to connect to this small display through the AOC to show you the hot plug, interrupt, and the other features that are involved in it.
Right.
Now, this is our AIO 2. Not the original AIO. This one's slightly different, and that we now have the power supply and the Phoenix plug in line with the HDMI cables to make a slimmer installation, and the price has dropped.
Right. Now, of course, in this setup here, we're showing you using it in the troubleshooting fashion. So this is something where you're using it to find out what the problem is. But we designed it in a way that when you find what the problem is, if this becomes the fix,
you leave it in the job.
You leave it in the job. It's easy to put in place. It's not going to take up a lot of room. You'll see that it's, like he said, you've got the Phoenix connector and the power are in line with the HDMI cables, so you have a nice clean install when you do mount it, either in the rack or on the wall.
Because of a dealer call, we redesigned this, because on our fiber optic cables, the install bay with detachable head shell, the power cord would have hit the Phoenix plug.
Yeah, it was in the way.
So it actually stopped our development because of a dealer.
Yep.
And we fixed it.
Yeah.
Now, something else you need to have in your truck, carry spare HDMI cables.
Yes, very much so.
Short ones, long ones, medium ones.
Yep.
And as mentioned in our last episode, grounding essentials, carry a 50-foot 14-gauge extension cord.
Something else as well, guys. If you're
Cat
doing
5.
Some Cat 5, of course, as you're doing installs or as you're doing troubleshooting and whatnot, once a year, every 6 months or so, replace that HDMI cable.
Yes,
you're going to be plugging it in and taking it out.
Good forever.
Yeah, and the more times you use it in and out, in our lab that we have back here, we replace the cables fairly often, because we do have to change our configuration fairly often to do different troubleshooting, or if we're testing some different equipment. So we do keep new cables, and of course we're testing them to make sure that they're working again for the testing purposes.
And by the way, don't believe that every cable, I don't care who makes it, is going to be perfect, because you can fight what looks to be something else and it turns out just to be
it's your cable.
A bad cable. You had one this week.
Yes, we did. Yeah, so just definitely make sure that
it was not, fortunately, an ethereal cable.
No.
But it does happen.
Yeah, it does. So definitely, take a look at the cable. Replace your cable every so often when you're doing your troubleshooting.
Your kit.
Kit. Thank you. Yes. And make sure that test it before going out into the field. Make sure you've got your TV there at the showroom or in your office or whatever that you're using to test
to validate your sources and your test gear.
Exactly.
So let's get into the actual process.
Okay.
Which end would you start at?
So normally for myself, I like to start at the display.
And why is that?
The reason is because normally, starting at the display, I'm already standing there, seeing that there's a problem. And so for me, it's just easier. I'm already here. I'm already working at this point. I'm going to start there and work my way backwards.
Well, it's not just that. We actually want to make sure you can get a picture with something.
Exactly, yeah.
So if you spend all this time working with your rack, your cables, and it turns out that the port's bad on your TV, you've just wasted a lot of time. So start at the display side.
Yeah.
That's where having something as simple as a generator or one of these sources to plug in a short cable, make sure you got a picture on that port.
Yeah.
Don't just, and by the way, don't start with the cable that's already in the job.
Right.
Put a new cable into that television, into that port, with whatever source you're using to make sure that you get a picture.
Now, what I'm going to do in that instance is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take that, what's already there, and I'm going to take the input from the TV, and I'm just going to simply plug it into a different input on the TV. And I'm going to switch the TV over there. And that's going to be my first check. Now, of course, depending on what is actually wrong with it, in this instance, we're saying that we have no picture.
Not fuzzies, not sparklies, because that's a distance issue on the cable.
Exactly. So in this instance, we have no picture. So I'm going to start at the TV, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure the TV is turned on. I'm going to make sure
and the right input. Don't laugh.
Once too many phone calls we have taken where guys call in and we're looking at, and we spent 15, 20, 30 minutes on the phone with these guys, and we say, let's go back to the TV. Are you sure it's plugged in? Are you sure we're on the right input? Do me a favor, just cycle through the inputs one time for me just to make sure. And unfortunately,
the way, I've dealt with this one because somebody will come behind you and move a plug because they want to plug a video game in.
Ah, yes.
And you don't know that your macro, which is expecting to go into input number 2,
yep,
they moved your fake cable into number 3 because they plugged the game into number 2.
Exactly. Yep, yeah, it happens. So, in my case, I would start there. I would go ahead and unplug the HDMI cable and plug it into a different input. If it's still not working at that point, then yes, I would go ahead and grab another source.
I start with the fresh cable right out of the gate.
Grab another cable.
I start with the cable and a source, and I start with the known port because that's what the macro is.
Right.
And then if that doesn't work, then I look at others.
Right.
One of the things to remember is when you're dealing with HDMI, because it is a very sensitive chipset, it is very easy for a single port in a product to be killed and the other ones to still be good.
Right.
However, this is going to indicate a long-term problem. Do not assume that just moving it over. We've seen a lot of guys do this with the cable boxes, and that will be an upcoming episode where it kills a port, they move it over, it works for a while, kills that port, they move it over, it works for a while, kills that port.
Yep.
Before you get to the last port, stop.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to have at least one good working port at some point.
Source, cable, make sure the display works before you do anything else.
Exactly. Then from there,
now if assuming the TV works,
yep,
and we're assuming that port works, now we want to go back to the source side of the cable or the extender that is there. We're back to our standalone source.
Yes.
So now we plug our standalone source in it. Does that part of the system work?
Yep.
If it does not, is it an extender or is it a cable? We're back to carrying an extension cord and a long HDMI cable.
Right.
It is not uncommon, as we discussed in our last episode, for grounding issues to fight this. That is why you want to have the long extension cord.
Right.
Because you could do everything right and it still doesn't work.
Yeah. Now,
and that could be on the 110
side.
Case,
let's say you have an active cable. You were going longer distances. Let's say we have an active HDMI cable or even a fiber HDMI cable. In those instances, let's say you did have some kind of surge or some kind of dip in the voltage, and we've burned up the actual processing chips that are actually in those cables. Well, in that case, then yeah, we want to go ahead and have that longer cable as a test cable that you're just going to drape along the floor as a test. We're going to find out. We're going to put that in place. Do we get picture? Hey, if we get picture, that's a really good sign.
Good indicator if we get a problem in the cable.
Problems with the cable. So pretty straightforward. Take that cable out and plug it in.
So assuming that the cable's good,
right?
Assuming that we have plugged this in, to the fiber, the extender, or the active or passive cable that's there, and we get a picture,
right?
What is the next step?
So at that point, we're going to take a look at the source. So let's say in this instance, we have we're going into an AVR.
Yes, we are.
So if we go into, we have our source, our HDMI cable to the source, or to the AVR. Then from the AVR, let's say we're going along active cable to our display. So far we've checked the display. We've made sure that everything is good there.
We've made sure the cable's good.
Yep, and so we verified that the cable is good. Now we're at the receiver, or the AVR, or the AVR separates, or whatever they're working with. So in that instance, we're going to look at a couple things there. First and foremost, do you have any kind of picture from the AVR itself.
Splash screen, logo screen, anything.
Some kind of menu, if you can get into the menu at that point. One of the big things that we run into a lot of times is firmware updates. If you can see an image from your AVR,
of any kind,
whether it be Onkyo or Denon or Marantz or whoever else, Yamaha or somebody, if you can see the on-screen interface from the AVR, at that point you want to go into the menu, double check that you have the firmware is completely up to date.
Typically the splash screen is going to be a 1080p screen, not a 4K screen.
Exactly, and that's going to be another thing to test as well.
Now, let's assume that, again, cable's good, TV's good, but we have an issue. Do not automatically assume it's the AVR, as he said, could easily be a setting, but what we want to do next is take that cable, that extender, whatever you've got there, bypass the AVR, go to a source.
Right.
Because, and again, I am not blaming the AVR. Firmware updates will kill you. People changing settings will kill you.
Yes.
So you want
to, as we well know, sometimes the consumers, and we understand that the consumers
it's their system.
It's their system, and they are free to use it as they want to. But the thing is that some guys, they get curious, or some consumers, they get curious about it. So definitely, take a look, double check, maybe keep record of how you have it set up when you leave. Take pictures. Everyone's walking around with cameras in their pockets now.
Yeah.
Take a picture of all the settings before you leave. Make that kind of
or
common
if
practice.
Some of the manufacturers like Sony will allow you to download your settings and save them. Do that. If you have a way to lock the client out of the AVR processor, please do.
Right.
But mark your settings, because you don't want to get back and not be able to get in yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So
I was recently on a job where the Wi-Fi and the distribution, and the Wi-Fi was separate from the network switching, and the two people that did it did not share information, so nobody could get in. You don't want to be that guy.
It happens. It happens.
So we verified that the AVR is working.
Right.
We verified the cable's working, but still it's not working together, which means everything independently can still be good.
Right.
But it's still not happy. That's where this comes in.
Right.
Because this fixes a whole lot of things. Now, it's not going to tell you, okay, it's this, this, or this, because at that point you're into the thousands of dollars of test equipment versus the very reasonably priced piece of test and repair equipment.
Exactly.
Now, in this case, we have a hot plug interrupt. This simply ties to your control system or any switch that you can control. And we have the CS-IR Kit CCUS, which is very good for that. But this is an on and off switch. Now, you see here the screen, there's a picture. We're generating a test pattern here.
Yep.
It's going through the AIO into here. I'm going to shut off the hot plug. Now, what this does is, the way HDMI works, it reset. HDMI sends a 5-volt trigger from source to display to wake it up.
Right.
Then it sends voltage from the display back to the source to let the source know it's there and start EDID negotiations.
Right.
Who are you? What are you? Resolution, bit rate. Do you want HDR? Do you want audio? And last but not least, can you give me the secret HDCP handshake?
Exactly.
Once all that's done, the picture is released. But there can be issues because a lot of TVs do not interrupt hot plug. Now, we see this with calls. Guys will call in, yeah, everything works great, but a day or two later it doesn't work and we have to unplug the cable, we have to plug it back in when we turn the system on.
Right.
And that's simply because the TV is not releasing the hot plug, so the source and the AVR have not renegotiated to know what to do. You take the AIO2, you tie it into your control system RRCS-IR Kit CCUS, and every time you guys shut the system off, you reset it, and it forces a reset so things start. That's a tremendous problem solver. Plus it strips the capacitive loading, fixes EDID issues, supports voltage and current on the TMDS feeds, which is another big troubleshooting problem.
Yep.
So I am being told we're short on time.
Yeah, we have a little bit longer though. So there's a couple things that I want to get into. What I want to get into, guys, is let's talk about the don'ts. So we talked about starting at one end. You always want to start at the end of something. I don't care if it's going to be the source or the display. The biggest thing with troubleshooting is starting there and working your way
consistent.
Through. And the main thing with this also is when you're working through this, if you're going to be making changes along the way, like let's say you get to the AVR and you're making changes to the AVR. When you're at that point, make sure that you're not making multiple changes at one time to test.
Document
Yeah, find out what you're doing, because if you make more than one change at one time before testing it, we don't know what fixed it. We don't know if it was this thing or this thing. We don't know if it was the combination of things.
Or you just got lucky and it's working at the moment.
Exactly. So you definitely want to go through, be meticulous, start at one end, work your way all the way through.
Take notes.
Yep.
Write it down. Do not just show up and start making changes willy-nilly.
Right. Don't get there and start in the middle of the problem, and in the middle of the
And
the
it is
system.
common, guys. They start at the receiver. This is, oh yeah, and don't.
Yep.
Start. We have to make sure the system works at the TV.
Right.
You really, our projector or whatever else.
So with that, it's honestly making sure to start at one end. It's going to make sure that you're not getting in there and getting frustrated. One of the big things that we get when we get the phone calls, inevitably, and it happens, and we get it. But I mean, honestly, we've been there.
Oh yeah.
We've been there. We've been out there in the field.
We've been there at our desk.
Yeah. Well, we've been out there, and what happens is you get there and you're like, yeah, I've checked as much as I can think to check, and I'm just getting frustrated at this point, and I'm just so upset right now that I'm not making sense of anything. So what I like to do is I like to go ahead and start back up, start at one end, take a breath, and start over.
Remember, it is not uncommon to not see the forest because you're standing right in front of the tree, and it's a cliche, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is when you call us, we're going to ask you questions. I would encourage you not to give us your entire life story as soon as we pick up the phone.
Right.
Because you're going to inundate us with so much that we're not going to be able to track what's been done either.
Right.
So we're going to get our notepad or my whiteboard out, in my case.
Yep.
And we're going to ask you questions. Okay, Adam, have you done this?
No. Or
Okay.
yes.
And then we're going to track from there.
Yeah.
The other thing of it is, let's face it, guys, I'm a genius, in my own opinion. I'm not. But we are not on the job site with you, so we don't have the pressure that you have with the client looking over your shoulder. So we are a third set of eyes that can help you through this. Please call us.
Yeah.
We are here to help you. We want to solve the problem. We want you to look like a god to your client. That's our goal.
Yeah.
We're not there to be the God. He doesn't know who we are. He doesn't care who we are. We want you to look fantastic to your client. He's happy, you're happy, you've got paid, you go home, and everybody's ready for the next job.
Exactly. So at any rate, even through all the troubleshooting, sometimes the next troubleshooting step is to call out, find out what someone else is saying about it.
And we have a very good working relationship with a lot of the manufacturers out there. They'll send us gear, they'll send us AVRs, projectors. It may take it, we may actually have to duplicate your system.
Right.
And we do.
Yes, we do.
We set up jobs. We work with JVC, Sony, Onkyo, Integra, Denon, Marantz, Yamaha. They will help us solve your problem because they don't want to hear about it either.
Well, and a lot of times what happens is we get phone calls from people that have called either Sony or JVC or Yamaha or whoever else, and
they say call
Metra.
Ethereal.
Now, granted, at that point, a lot of times they have also gone through a lot of troubleshooting steps already. And again, if you've already gone through it, a lot of times we're going to have you go through it one more time.
Just so we're on the same page.
Exactly. Make sure we're on the same page. And again, it's another set of, we're not actually looking at it, but it's another set of eyes. We're having you go in there and one more time, we're going to walk you through it. That way we can see if maybe it's just something really simple that somebody missed. We
get that you're under a lot of pressure. We get that you want to get it done and get the heck out of there.
Yeah, you want to get paid.
Believe me, we understand because we're both integrators still.
Yes.
And by the way, working with another integrator can always be challenging.
Yes, it can.
I don't envy him having to go on a job site with me.
Yes.
Yes.
That'll be a whole other episode.
And by the way, we mentioned it on our last show, but you're going to start seeing a whole new series from us. Tech Tips Expanded.
Right.
And we're going to get a whole lot deeper into this because there's a tremendous amount more to know. All we can really do is cover just in a few minutes here because we only got 25 minutes.
Yeah, so we really just want to kind of give you guys an overhead view of what it looks like to just do a basic troubleshooting setup. The main thing about behind all of this is just the general concepts of starting at one end, working your way through, being very meticulous the entire way through.
Taking notes.
It's almost better sometimes a lot of times you guys will go out onto a job site with two people. I've found myself personally that if I have two people working on one problem or troubleshooting one problem, it almost becomes more difficult
because you're doing two different things at the same time.
Exactly. So I find a lot of times it's better to either have the other person be somebody who is pushing a button for you and not acting on their own. So in that case, you're not,
Right, because
two
they can
people
do
doing
things you
one
don't know
thing.
they did, and you do something and suddenly it works, but nobody knows why.
Exactly, and that's the main thing. We really want to know why it works. It's not
Because
just
you don't want it to fail again.
as much as we want you to get done with the job, get paid, and get out of there. We also want to know why it's working. We want to know why it's not working, but we also want to know why it is working. That way we
Not
can make
how,
sure.
but why.
Yes, exactly. We also want to make sure that everything, because then at that point, if we find out that there's a problem that can be easier fixed by another solution, again, we want to come up with that solution and release it for you guys. That makes your life a whole lot easier in the long run.
And on that note, we are out of time.
Yes, we are.
I'm Brent.
I'm Adam.
We'll see you in our next show.
Thanks,
By the
guys.
way, don't forget to comment on Facebook, YouTube, send us your questions. And we have the giveaway for the 30-foot AOC cable.
That's right.
To the best question, story, or picture. Thank
That's
you.
right.